So real quick, hi, my name is Ken Ott, and I'm the co-founder of Metacake, and I'm super happy to be here. I think this can be a fun discussion. I am here in my home in Nashville, and everyone in Nashville does play guitar. It's a requirement in where I live. I've spent my life helping businesses grow creatively using technology and specifically e-commerce. And so you can feel free to connect with me at ken@metacake.com if you have any additional questions for me after this, or I'll also be at the booth and in chat and things like that. But that's ken@metacake.com. Metacake, real quick on Metacake, it's an e-commerce growth team. And it's the joke I use is I never met a cake I didn't love. So that's kind of how you say it. So Metacake. And we do coaching. We have educational products like books and courses and things. We also do one-on-one work with businesses. We've worked with really large brands like P&G, which I think is a good example for this distribution model. And then we also work with a lot of smaller brands as well, implementing e-commerce, helping them grow in healthy ways. And so if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to go to metacake.com. You can learn more there. You can also reach out to anyone here directly, and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves and kind of give their contact info too, so that any questions anyone has, they can kind of direct them where appropriate. Given that there's a lot of sort of people that are getting started in e-commerce, we put together a small cheat sheet of getting started resources. So if anyone is interested in that, you can go to metacake.com/get-started. metacake.com/get-started. And hopefully that can help somebody. So, all right, let's jump into the topic. So we've got like an awesome panel of people here, all with deep e-commerce specializations and also relationships and knowledge about the distribution and manufacturing world. And so the goal here is to kind of put some practical tips together so people can really start to implement things. But I also want to talk a bit about the strategy of how e-commerce fits into the role of a distributor or a manufacturer. And I know, Will, you discussed that a bit already, and but I think we want to dive into that a little bit as well. And so we've got about 45 minutes and only about a few more minutes with Billy. So we're going to try and break this up into like about 15 minutes talking about the strategy of how you implement e-commerce and maybe some of the challenges that are there. And then about 15 minutes talking about actions, like how do you start? Where do you start? What does it cost? What should you invest? How should you market it? That kind of thing. And then we'll leave a few minutes at the end for questions from the group. And again, if anyone has any questions that aren't covered, you can just connect with each of us individually or at the booths, which are kind of cool, these little virtual booths. Okay, so that sounds good. Let's go. Real quick, I'd love to go around and just have all you guys introduce yourself, what your role is, a little bit about the company that you're with, and we can just maybe start with Billy. How's that sound?
Yeah, of course. Appreciate it. And I'm happy to be here. So just to give you guys context on the company and then my background first, because I think it's a little bit different than most people here. So I work for a company called Gorgias, and we work exclusively with e-commerce brands. We do have e-commerce brands that have an offline model, but most of these are brands, so they're the supplier as well. They're manufacturing their own product, and basically, Gorgias is a help desk. So all of the different channels that your buyers are communicating with you from, and when you think online, you're thinking like Will said, social, Facebook, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, live chat on your website, comments on posts, email, phone, of course, the more traditional places. We bring all of those things into one place. So most of my day-to-day now is with e-commerce brands. And then what I'm doing here is I manage all of our partnerships in North America. So not with distributors, but with agencies, basically people like DCKAP that are scaling these e-commerce brands. But before I started with Gorgias, actually my first job out of college after grad school was with a distributor. So it was the standard distribution model where like I had a territory. We had our manufacturers, we had a big catalog. And I did that for about a year and a half. And it was, you know, I did my grad school in chemistry. So I was a chemist, but I wanted to get into sales and business. So it was like a really good experience for the first year and a half. But to be honest, I didn't love the distribution model, because at least the distributor that I was with, it was always about margins. It was never really about value add. And we were also selling a lot to government ran labs, academic labs. So it was always, you know, tender based, funding based. You know, it wasn't privatized. So it was always about, you know, the highest margins and what discount we can give these people to get the product out versus value. So yeah, cool experience for about a year and a half, but I didn't love that model. So then basically a year and a half after that, I met these two guys at MIT starting a company, and they were building a muscle oxygen sensor. So I jumped in with them very early before launching, you know, during the R&D phase. And when we decided to launch the product, we launched exclusively e-commerce. So we started with Shopify as our e-commerce platform, and I had no e-commerce experience. So like, you know, setting up an e-commerce company all the way from fulfillment to marketing to all of these different touch points that Will was talking about, podcasts, like blogs, email marketing, SEO, things like that. That was all new, but it was exciting. So I just felt like I had a lot more control over like the success of our business. And so we started e-commerce. We actually did get into distribution as well, internationally, for logistical reasons. So we kind of had both models, and we scaled that pretty well for about a year and a half, came to a small exit, and then I transitioned here. So I know that was a bit of a long introduction, but yeah, so e-commerce has been most of my experience, a little bit of distribution experience at the beginning.
No, that was good. And, you know, we work in e-commerce pretty much exclusively as well, although we help people strategize between the different channels, which also include distribution and wholesale. But we use Gorgias a ton, and it's a really great customer service tool, and customer service is so key in any experience, especially in the e-commerce experience, which is kind of what we'll get into, which is also why you're here. So thank you, Billy. Brian, how do you say your last name, Brian? Is it Nunes or Nunes?
It's neither of those. It's Nunes.
Oh, it's
even easier.
I didn't see the thing. Okay. Well, Brian, would you introduce yourself and APS Payments?
Yeah, I'm Brian Nunes with APS Payments. And our goal is to help manufacturers and distributors keep as much of the money they can keep. We do that through processing payments through a very distributor and manufacturer focused way in terms of getting them the types of discounts they can get on their transactions. I know in today's world, you guys are probably still dealing with a lot of invoices and getting checks and things like that, but we help you keep more of your money. We help you get it faster. And we also understand how B2B business works. So we understand the workflows and challenges you have. So that's basically what we do as a company, is we help you keep your money and get it faster.
I love that. Those are great things, especially right now. Will, I'm not skipping you, but I think we heard a lot about you already. No, I'm not. Just
I'm
kidding.
tired anyway. It's okay.
Will Miller from Kogane, head of marketing, or?
Yep. Now I am. Yep.
Okay. Amazing. So, actually, a lot of this conversation, I wanted to key off of what you just said. And so real quick, let's talk about the strategy of e-commerce as it pertains to distributors, manufacturers. First, we've seen like e-commerce kind of, the stat is that it grew 10 years time in 3 months over the last 3 months. I've seen something that said a few stats that say so typically it's about 12% of global retail, and it got up to about 30%. And now it's kind of teetered back down, but it's still kind of leveling at a much higher level. And clearly it's been forcefully adopted by a new set of people, and that will probably continue. And it's just important to consider for any business how you do e-commerce, or maybe even more broadly, how you create a really healthy online channel. And so I think it's important to point out in the world of e-commerce that, you know, we coach a lot of consumer brands, a lot of manufacturers, you know, CPGs, those kind of brands. And while e-commerce is incredibly important, it's only one channel in the entire sales channel strategy. And so, and each, I always say, for a healthy business, you need to have a good balance of all the different channels, including wholesale distribution and marketplaces and other types of channels. So each channel kind of has a pro and a con, or pros and cons. But I'd like to talk about this this question, and Will, you kind of hit it earlier. Traditionally, distributors and wholesale channels have seen e-commerce as a threat in some ways, and for many rightly so. So while I don't believe it's a threat, I actually think it can be an advantage. I do think because e-commerce is available to everybody, I do think it's a threat to traditions, right? Like any type of disruptor threatens the old way of doing something. But I don't believe it's a threat to the role. And the reason I know that from my perspective is we see continued, in fact, we see a lot of e-commerce brands increasing the investment in that distributor wholesale channel. And I think it's a really good thing when it's in balance. And so I don't think it's a threat to the role, but I do think it changes and threatens some traditions. And so let's talk about that. I think when disruption happens, I always like to ask this question: why is this happening for me? You know, the pressure that is created by the disruption forces you to innovate. And while that is hard, it results in a huge benefit often for the company and the person. It also levels the playing fields in a lot of ways, and it creates opportunities. And so with that in mind, I'm going to kick it to Will first. I want to ask you this question, Will, like basically with e-commerce, with the role, with e-commerce coming into play, how has the role of a distributor changed? And for the sake of this discussion, let me ask you this question: are distributors even necessary anymore in the ecosystem?
Yes, they are necessary. And so I don't get my butt kicked, I want to preface again, I am a manufacturer, a supplier. So in respecting Billy's experience, and here's where he can't argue. We have to take a step back and think about, like, make things simple. We talk about e-commerce, it's about, the fancy word is, it's a transaction, it's digital. So instead of me physically handing somebody an invoice and saying, pay me, like when I get eggs and bacon, they're now going to do it online, period. So we'll simplify it. Every distributor that's a part of the AHTD association, or and I forget the term that Leah said, solution provider. We all supply an industry called manufacturing. To make it real simple for a meathead like me, they are a company that make a thing. You ever see a TV show how it's made? It could be a crayon, a razor, I don't care. They make a physical product. So if we think in that context, if they make a thing, why would somebody want to buy from me? Three things. One, cost of goods sold. The acronym COGS, cost reduction. If this microphone, I can buy or partner with a distributor that helps me make this $10 cheaper, that's more net income and profit for me. Manufacturers happy with the product that they make, buying from Billy because this is now cheaper from buying from Billy. Delivery, it allows the person that makes the thing at a lower cost because of Billy to also make more, because the thing that Billy sold us allows us to make more things at a lower cost of goods sold and more net income. And lastly, my distributor, Billy, who I love, sold me the thing that allowed me to reduce the cost of goods sold, allowed me to make more, increase throughput or output or production, whatever you call it. And also, it lasts longer than it did when I bought the other thing from not Billy. So when you think about those three things, a distributor, virtually, remote, I don't give a crap. These products are not the kayak that I bought on Amazon. Really can attest. You're talking about running parallelism at end of stroke of 5,000ths of a millimeter. So our products, and I'll argue any of you e-commerce gurus, are very technical. For example, whether they buy from catalog companies, guess what? The number one customer service measurement matrix, whatever, for e-commerce platforms is what? Customer service, technical support. The value of the distributor, in my mind, isn't supplying the brands, as I gave the example before, and that's not a slam to them. They're filling the shelves with everybody. We have every line that you want. The real value comes in to where me, the maker of this thing, at 1 a.m. on a Friday, where I've got to deliver 12 pallets of these, the machine broke. And my distributor in wherever, Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I'm at, gets up, sends their emergency response team, because I bought this from them versus Motion or somebody else. They have 12 people there fixing the machine, reducing my downtime. So I go back to making the thing. That's the value of the distributor in my mind. The challenge is, as an owner, when you look at that, the financials of everything and the transactions, and Billy will attest to this, many distributors will go like this. You didn't buy it from me, so we can't send our emergency response team. Because one, we're not going to be liable because you didn't buy it from us. And so therein lies the paradigm of, I don't think the distributor is reactionary. I think that a distributor, the reason why I would go to a distributor versus online is if shit goes down, they've got my back. And that is the big advantage that a distributor has over these big catalog companies right now. The big catalog companies go into their P&L, pull out a big pile of cash, know that the ROI is going to be very, very low. It's probably going to be an added operational cost and not profitable. But if they decide to staff people remotely, 50-mile separation coast to coast, that's going to be a problem. But the value of the distributor is supplying the parts that are needed, knowing technically how to install them, because again, I'll argue, it's not something that nut and bolt you put together. Some of these things are so precise that, like I said, from an actuator standpoint, timing, I mean, you're talking about, something firing on a conveyor every two milliseconds. I mean, it can cost thousands of dollars if done wrong. So distributors, there's a tremendous value because these products have dependency on knowledge and correct installation and function and operation. Should that ever change, then we're going to have an issue. But that, to me, is going to be the lifeblood of manufacturing as being unique.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I would say I was just trying to tee you up with a question. And clearly, I hit him.
Wrong way?
What's that?
Did I take it the wrong way?
No. It was rhetorical for the sake of discussion. But I do think I'd imagine that is in the mind of some people. And so I want to address it. And I think at the end of the day, in any business, I think it's important to look at what do I do? What is my unique value? That is, and oftentimes businesses and people end up doing a lot of things, and that's okay. And some of those things are things that can easily be commoditized or taken away by something else. But what is my unique value, and how do you focus on that? And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but for a distributor, one of their top unique values is that they have incredible knowledge and they have relationships, right? And so that is important. Maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, more important for certain types of products than others, right? Certain segments maybe than others. But it's something that personal relationship is something you can't replace with technology. In fact, I just think it needs to complement. I do think we've swung as a pendulum too far into that. And we're even feeling that right now, right? We're all isolated from each other. And it's like, wow, you kind of need personal connection. Technology just doesn't fill every gap, apparently. Which most people would have thought before this, but now we feel it. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of dig into that for a second and say, like, in my opinion, there's unique value that's very different than e-commerce. And even from our side, like we come from the e-commerce side, and we're often pulling in that element as a piece of strategy, because I do think to be healthy as a brand, you can't just have an e-commerce channel or a direct consumer channel.
Because again, and you guys can advise me, the only thing e-commerce is doing is just changing the transaction to virtual or digital. That's it. Like everybody's putting back into e-commerce is going to change everything else. No, everything else stays the same. Servicing, value add, assembly, testing, certifying, prototyping. That doesn't change in the e-commerce platform. The e-commerce is just the ability to automate the transactions with those customers, but all the other work remains the same. But then, like I said, you have to leverage having it, because that's what now everybody expects. But then also, if nobody knows about it,
I mean, e-commerce is automating manual tasks in a lot of ways, which has happened for hundreds of years. It's just another type of doing that, but it doesn't mean, like I said, I think it threatens traditions, 100%. Or like any other disruptor does. But I don't think it threatens the role. So let's then. I want to kick it to Billy, and I know Billy, you might have to go here in a second, and if you do, thank you, and you can jump off at any time. But I'd love to ask you. You run partnerships at Gorgias, right? So this is not really an e-commerce question. This is more of like, and correct if I'm wrong, like you're in charge of basically all the partner relationships at Gorgias. Yep. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so like, I think there's a connection here, which is why I wanted to ask you this question. Like, how do you see developing reciprocal value in partnerships? Because I think that partnerships are a lot like they're those B2B go-between relationships that have to have reciprocal value. And not unlike manufacturers and distributors and those and those person-to-person connections, you have to have reciprocal value created, and there has to be an intention around it. So how do you do that at Gorgias? How do you create value in being a Gorgias partner? How do you keep that connection strong, and how do you sell your product through your partners?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So, I mean, our partnerships are a little bit different than your traditional distribution, supplier, and buyer partnership, because we partner with agencies, basically marketing agencies, website builders that build websites and grow an e-commerce business's brand. So there's, we want them to send us business. We want them to take their clients and give us business, but like they need a reason to do that. So, we spend a lot of time and allocate a lot of resources on making the agency understand where the value is for their client, but then we also have incentives for the agency to grow their agency. Because if we were to say, hey, so we have a revenue share, for example, but that's a very small piece. It's like, even if we said, hey, if you send us your client, we'll give you a rev share. That rev share is so small that it's not moving the needle for their agency. So our middleman is the agency. And so for them, their biggest motivator is to provide value to their client. If they think we have the service that's going to provide the most value, that's what they get. So there's a big education factor. But the other piece for them is they also want to grow their business. They want to say, okay, like if we're referring you our business, like how can we get business from you? So we are basically showing them like, hey, these are how you can get access to our clients. And also, hey, we're going to spend this much money on growing our partnership, whether that be in the form of a virtual event or an in-person event when they were. So it's super important to obviously show reciprocal value. And I think when it comes to distribution, I mean, Will said it, and just to back up too with Will, I 100% don't think distribution is dead. That was my experience with one distributor. Like the in-person, the technical support, that experience isn't going anywhere. I think the distributor I worked with, like a large percentage of their revenue was from technical support, was from installations and maintenance. Like it was a huge percentage of it. Like I don't remember now the exact, but it was like, 40 or 50%. Like it was almost half. So that's not going anywhere. I think, like you said, Ken, what's changing is how some distributors are going to be operating. So like when we did distribution, the value for us when I worked at that startup, the value for us was like, we were a startup. No one knew what our name was. Like we were selling online, doing our own branding, but that takes years. You need multiple touches with with people. They need to see your brand before they're purchasing 7, 8, 9 times. So we had distributors in the sports tech space, that's where I was in, that had reputation, they had the sales channels that we didn't. So for us, like, there was a huge value add because they did that. And we had one distributor in Spain who was in e-commerce. They were selling stuff online as well. And I think, like, as a distributor, there's a lot of value. I mean, Will, like, you're doing marketing, you know, you're creating awareness for your company, which makes it easier for the distributor. So we were doing the same thing. But I think, you know, there's a lot of value in a distributor that has an online presence, because they're, you know, if a distributor is saying, hey, like, we're spending money allocating resources to, like, building your brand, it's not only that they have the sales channels, they're also getting your name out there. So yeah, so I think there's, like, a huge opportunity for distributors to kind of set themselves, you know, to add that value other than just their sales channel.
And it's a pretty core philosophy in selling anything, that the higher that you need a relationship in order to sell something. So you either, and so you have to either develop that yourself, which takes a lot of time, money, and effort. But working with someone who has a relationship just increases that. And I think it's interesting that technology platforms like yourself have invested into partnership programs, which effectively, like, I would say it's similar to the manufacturer distributor relationships. You've created these partner programs, and you're online first, and you've created these partner programs because these partners have access to potential clients of yours, and they have the relationships with those clients, and they have the knowledge about your platform, so they're able to more effectively, or maybe, yeah, probably more efficiently, sell it into those places. I just think that's interesting, because you see current technology first companies creating these distributor-like, you know, one.
It's a virtual, yeah, it's an online, like, distributor model there. And it's huge for us. I mean, like the partnership channel for us, like, working with partners and resellers is, like, you know, last quarter, it was about 50% of our, well, Q2 just ended, but it was about 50% of the company's revenue. So like, the partnership side is huge for us. And I think for the partner too, like, it's, you know, we as a Silicon Valley SaaS company have, like, thousands and thousands of clients, and, like, a lot of money, you know, that we raise to kind of, like, throw out there. So for them, it gives them good awareness. And then, you know, our product is very technical at times too. So, like, there's some stuff that we don't do. Like, sometimes, you know, they need to custom integrate or build, you know, customization integrations with other apps to our platform that we don't do for them. So it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, to their clients too, like, you know, this is the product you should use because we think it's the best one. And also, hey, we're certified here, and we can build this into your e-commerce stack. So then they're charging their clients, and they're making money from it as well.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Billy. Are you good, or you have to jump off? I'll
stay on for 15 more minutes. I was honestly excited about the conversation, and then
I'd like to get your input on some things in a few minutes here, if you're gonna stick around. So I think where I want to go with this is, so let's get practical. How can distributors and manufacturers, but maybe even, will you tell me more so distributors? And sorry, I'm at home, and I have 3 little kids, and if you can hear them, it's just real life. Sorry.
I have non-duct taped.
What's that?
My kids are duct taped.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Just kidding. Sorry. So Brian, I want to kick it to you. Like, I'd like to talk about ways that distributors, manufacturers, maybe even more so distributors, and Will, you can chime in here too. Like, how can they actually start to take e-commerce and implement it into their business and utilize it for themselves? And there's almost two ways they have to kind of consider it, right? One is how do they complement the brand's e-commerce, and the other is how can they execute on their own e-commerce or online platform?
Okay. Well, I'm going to play off a little bit of what Will said earlier. I think he purposely kind of oversimplified things when it was like, it's just a transaction and now it's just in a different place, right? And I think there's a lot with B2B e-commerce that's different from your normal B2C type e-commerce. In the B2C space, they've really advanced technology and functionality to a point where B2B, even though their business is different, they're able to utilize some of that technology, but just in a different way. So here's an example. A lot of the things, I think when you're a distributor, you need to look at how your website can become an actual customer service portal, okay? And take a lot of those tasks that was done by a person and have it automated, because I think in our normal lives, when we have our B2C transactions, we expect not to have to call someone about something as simple as, did it ship yet, right? We don't want to pick up a phone or send an email about that. That all should be automated. And you can automate a lot of that menial task and let your employees repurpose themselves in different ways that benefit the company more. Here's an example of some things that are important in the B2B space when it comes to having an e-commerce presence. One, a lot of your customers, depending on your pricing model, have specific pricing, customer-specific pricing. It could be standard tiers that you're offering. It could be one company buys 1 million of these things from you, and that's the only thing they buy, right? Well, they're going to get a special price on that. So you want to have the ability for your customers to log in, see their customer-specific pricing, because they don't want to have to call and figure out what that was. They also want to see availability. You know, they may want to see available inventory. I've even dealt with companies where they said they wanted to be able to see inventory by warehouse, right? And so that's important. Managing things like back orders, returns, even being able to see their open invoices and pay their invoices online. All of these things are a little bit different than your regular B2C e-commerce experience. And really what those are customer service things that you are actually providing to your customers, that if they don't get it from you and your competitor has that and it makes their life easier, they may go take a look at them. So these are things that I think a B2B company or distributor needs to look at when it comes to understanding what e-commerce is. It's not just seeing products, buying products. It's the whole customer service piece of it.
I think that's really good. And I think it's actually a good transition to this next piece, which I love to kind of get into, which is how can we give some tips and some steps, some practical things that someone who hasn't implemented e-commerce yet, whether you're a manufacturer or a distributor, can start doing. And so Haripriya, I want to kick it to you for a bit here. If you want to introduce yourself, I know you kind of got cut off right before you were able to earlier. I'd love to hear just what you do at DCKAP, and then here's what I want to ask you. I want to ask you for companies looking to start to add e-commerce, right? What are some of the first steps, like the baby steps they should be looking into? Where do they actually start?
Thanks, Ken. Sorry, I had some bad connection at that time. I work as a technical writer at DCKAP, and I develop product documentation for one of the products in DCKAP. I have over 5 years of experience in tech pubs, and I've worked in various fields like semiconductors, automobiles, and I've started working in e-commerce. I'm pretty new to e-commerce, but I've been doing a lot of research, especially with content. Research is key. So I've learned a lot of things over the past 8-9 months. And yeah, it's happy to be part of this panel right now. And going back to your question, I think the most amazing part of e-commerce is the ability to impact sales and marketing efforts almost immediately, right? So when a merchant tries to get into e-commerce, he can see sales and profitability almost instantly. And another good thing is that web-based sales have no geographical boundaries. So I think the first step is for a merchant to explore and do the groundwork that he needs to do. So understand what his products are, who his target audience is going to be, what would be their geographical presence, and basically do some groundwork. And once that's there, and he needs to analyze why he is adding his e-commerce platform into his business. What value does it add to his business? Is it to build a customer base? Is it to provide better customer service, or for better brand awareness? So that kind of analysis is necessary, I think. And the next step is to actually set up the website or the e-commerce store. So that is typically outsourced to an agency, if depending on the size of the business. So, and what these agencies or website developing companies do is they analyze the merchant's requirements. They come up with a plan, right? There's a site creation plan, a website creation plan. That would typically include a software or a platform to build the site upon, the design and the content, and other navigation details, and the payment gateway and shipping options, all that. So that is typically done by the website designing company. So after designing, we jump and development, we go into publishing the website, and then there is maintaining the website. So many of these companies, they have an annual payment plan to maintain e-commerce stores or any website for that matter. So I think these are the basic steps that a merchant would have to consider before jumping into the e-commerce space. So overall, I think the first step is the most important, right? So once you have that optimistic feel, you jump into it, and that's what matters the most. And once you're out there in the e-commerce space, it really opens up a world of possibilities.
I like that point because that's so important. It's often skipped over, right? So starting with the goals of what you're trying to do is important. And some might say, oh, that's really easy. Like, we want to sell more stuff. That's not really a goal. That I would say that's an indicator to a goal. But figuring out what you're trying to do with this endeavor, right? And I love how you broke it down. It could be selling, it could be increasing leads, awareness, education. There could be a whole bunch of different goals, primary goals. But starting there, and then I think what's important is once you have that, like, here's what we want this endeavor to do, I would say you need to put a value on it, like a number, because what could it mean to your business? Because that will help you when you're budgeting for how much you're going to invest into this. And you may not know what this is going to cost. And I would say that's okay at the start, because what I would actually suggest that most brands figure out what the value is, and then say, for that value, if it's going to make me, another $100,000 or $1 million this year, if it did that, be conservative with it, then I could invest this into it and be good with that. You kind of have then your sort of reasonable investment. And then you can start figuring out how do you use that money and what are the actual prices. And my suggestion, Haripriya, would you say, I know when you guys work with people, do they share their budgets with you, or do you have to, how does that interaction work?
I think it's both ways. One, they share a budget with us, and also we give them numbers. So when we talk about cost, right, there is no set cost. It really depends on how much sales and what the traffic is going to be and what features they need in their website. So there is actually no set number to how much a website design could cost. Again, it depends on the size of the business. It depends on what functionalities they need. Like you said, a $1 million company might spend about $50,000 a year just for their website maintenance, right? But a small size business would be ready to spend only about, say, 10 grand. So it really depends on the traffic that they will have once their store is up, and also, again, what features they need for their website.
So I think that's really good. So can we, would you mind just answering one more here, and then we got a couple of minutes, Haripriya. I'd like to give people a little bit of an idea of what costs look like. And so you mentioned $1 million company often invests about 50 grand a year. What are some ballparks, like some good investments? What are some costs for, let's say, starting a new website?
Yeah. So I would say, yeah. So for a small business, I think about 15 to 20 grand annually. That includes the website design, development, hosting, maintenance, SEO, and maybe if, we could include a little bit of integrations as well. That would be for a small size business. For a mid size business, something around we're looking at 60 to 80 grand annually. And if you're looking at an enterprise level business, again, anywhere over $200,000. So I think that is the ballpark number. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I would say I would agree with that. I generally tell people, if you're building a new e-commerce store, you probably want to spend, and ideally somewhere between 30 and 75 is sort of like the middle ground, 75K. And you could obviously, people spend hundreds of thousands and millions on that kind of stuff. But you can probably get away with it for less. You just have to, it may be simpler. I normally tell people though, like, you've got legitimately only, under $10,000 or something like that. You're probably best spending a lot of that on educating yourself, or just a small portion of that on educating yourself, maybe doing some things yourself, and then proving the model, because maybe the money's not there, or maybe the model's not there. You might as well use that to prove the model. And once the model's there, then you can work with someone, because it's going to cost a bit more to actually scale that.
I'd like to jump in. I'd like to jump in on that a little bit, if you don't mind. So you could spend $30,000 to $75,000 and get nothing for it. So that's a very big thing to think about, right? So one of your key factors is working with a company that has done it before. You don't want to be a company's guinea pig, okay? Especially when it comes to a B2B website. You want to make sure that company understands how B2B business works and how your company works, because we're probably all a little bit different. You're a B2B company. There's some things that are the same with yours as other companies, and some things that are not. So having that company understand your workflow, and have that company not have you as their guinea pig, as their first B2B business, is important, because it's going to save you a lot of time and money, because a lot of times they'll have functionality already built out that they can use, that they're not starting from scratch. And so if you're working with someone that's starting from scratch and they're doing everything from scratch, keep in mind, it'll probably cost you more than if you were working with someone who has that experience already.
I think that's a good point. I mean, the experience is key. And whether it's a B2B or a B2C site, that's key. See Tim jumping on. I think we're coming up at time, but I'd love to not end before we just mention the fact that if you build something, it's not going to do anything for you unless you have the ability to get it out there and start marketing. And those can be small things. Those can be free grassroots things, activities, and they're also obviously a lot of paid marketing, and that's a lot of what we do and a lot of what the industry does. And typically people may be like, "Oh, how do we actually do that?" I just want to kind of give some people some pointers on that. And so, when it comes to digitally marketing, I often suggest, identify your customers and where they are going to be, and then be there. So don't just be on social channels. Don't be on TikTok because someone told you to be on TikTok. Be on TikTok because of your customers there. Whatever it is, and only be there, and then invest appropriately there with content, really good content. And that's kind of what distributors are highly knowledgeable. Manufacturers are highly knowledgeable about their products, about their clients, about the products they sell. Use that and create really great valuable content with that. That would be, I think, a really smart thing. And then typically we like to say you want to spend up to 30% of revenue on marketing activities. Now, that's not marketing with no return. That would be marketing with an ROI, with a return on ad spend, but that's kind of a ballpark. And if you want to see some movement, I'm just trying to give people all the nuts and bricks that we can. If you want to see some movement, my suggestion is don't start with just a couple $100. Try and get to where you can start with a few $1,000s a month, and really you want to be scaling that as you see the return. But I do think it's important to say, like, don't expect. I wouldn't spend all your money on a website and then not be able to market it, because you're not going to get anyone there. And so make sure your budget is split across those. So with that, I know we're up on time. And Tim, I don't know if you're there. If you're not, we'll just keep going. But if you are, maybe when Tim comes back, he can see if there's any questions from the group. Here he goes.
Hey guys, yeah, that was a great discussion panel. No questions right now, so you guys did a great job and really explaining it all. So if you guys are still available, we still have the sessions tab open. So if you want to join in one of the 3 tables, feel free. So the first table will be for anyone new. The second table will be anyone want to kind of expand more on their e-commerce site or any best practices. And then, table 3, that's where I'll be at. If you want to kind of dig deeper on this Hopin platform, any suggestions for us for the next one? Do we go back to Zoom or, any personal development? That's one thing I'm very good. I love, learning more about. So, but yeah, thank you, Ken. Thank you guys for a great panel discussion. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today. And
I kind of wish I was able to get in about level 3 raises. I think all of these distributors and manufacturers would probably benefit from knowing that. So I can do that in one of the breakout rooms or briefly discuss that, because I think it affects all of their bottom line. And at some point, I'd love to discuss that.
Yeah. Just go to the booth, the Expo booth at the APS Payments booth, and you can learn more. And even when we share the video, I'll go ahead and share some of the blogs that we have from APS and the other guys as well. So sorry, Will, what were you going to say?
Nope. I was just going to say, I didn't promote it, but I've just been pretty lucky. I'm now a host of a national manufacturing podcast network where I have my own podcast, the Where's Willie Podcast.com. But I would love to have each of you as an individual guest, where we have a show where we talk about your core competencies. So definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, or let's just touch base and get you guys, because I think the timing is, again, serendipitous with e-commerce, and more people need to be educated.
Great.
Let's do it.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. It's all about the community, right? So the AHTD community with also the e-commerce ecosystem. So we're here to help you guys out. If you guys have any questions, I'll still be on here. But if anything else, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you guys in the session. Want to join? Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.